Event 1. Zenoba makes his decision. Volume 19 begins when Zenoba gathers Rudius, Cliff, Elinolise, Julie, and Ginger to explain what happened in Shirn. His brother Pax has returned from exile, taken support from the King Dragon realm, overthrown the royal family, and become king. The new king now summons Zenoba home because Shirn's army has weakened after the coup, and neighboring countries may attack. Everyone understands that this request may be a trap. Rudius and Cliff question why Zenoba would obey Pax at all. Zenoba admits he does not want to serve Pax, but he feels he owes Shirn, because his monstrous strength caused tragedies in the past and yet his country never truly punished him. Zenoba believes he was spared so that one day he could protect his homeland. Even if returning means death, he feels this is the duty he was left alive to fulfill. Rudius refuses to let his friend walk into danger alone. He decides that if Zenoba must go to Shirn, then he will go with him. Event 2. Orsted explains the trap behind Shirn. Rudius reports the situation to Orsted because anything involving Pax and Shirn may be connected to Hitagami. Orsted explains that in his known timeline, Pax would eventually create the Shirn Republic. That future republic would become very important because it would produce people and conditions that interfere with Hitagami's plans. This means Pax is not just a troublesome king. He is a key piece in the future, and losing him could damage Orsted's entire long-term strategy. Orsted warns that Zenoba's summons is probably bait. Hitagami may be trying to kill both Zenoba and Rudius, especially because Zenoba helps create Rudius's magical equipment. Orsted decides to investigate the King Dragon realm for possible apostles, while Rudius heads to Shirn. He also gives Rudius one crucial order: do not kill Pax, even if Pax appears suspicious. Event 3. Bad omens before the journey. When Rudius tells his family that he is leaving for Shirn, baby Lara begins to cry, almost like she is warning them that something is wrong. Roxy notices Lara's reaction and decides to accompany Rudius. As soon as Roxy says she will go, Lara stops crying, making the feeling of destiny even stronger. Rudius prepares both the heavier magic armor Mark I and the more manageable Mark Idib, along with his special cannon. He knows this mission may become a battlefield. Before leaving, the group goes to Perugilus's sky castle to borrow the teleportation circles. Zenoba asks Perugilus for permission to let Roxy enter, even though magic race visitors are normally restricted. Perugilus reluctantly agrees under strict conditions. Meanwhile, Ginger scouts ahead and reports that Pax has several knights from the King Dragon realm, including one of the 7 great powers, Death God Randolph Marion. Event 4. Return to Shirn. The night before departure, Orsted visits Rudius and gives details about Randolph Marion, the Death God. Randolph is ranked 5th among the 7 great powers. Orsted explains his dangerous sword techniques, which can confuse opponents by making them attack when they should retreat, or retreat when they should attack. Rudius says goodbye to his family and leaves Julie in the care of the household while Zenoba and Ginger are away. Rudius, Roxy, and Zenoba use the teleportation route and arrive near Shirn, several days from the capital. The journey has officially moved from preparation into enemy territory. As they approach the kingdom, Rudius thinks through every possible outcome. Roxy notices his stress and gently reminds him to stay calm. Event 5. Audience with King Pax. Rudius and Zenoba finally meet Pax in the royal palace. Pax questions how they arrived so quickly and wonders aloud whether Rudius has come to kill him. Pax introduces Death God Randolph Marion, who casually describes killing as his job and cooking as his hobby. His calm behavior makes him even more unsettling. Pax jokingly suggests having Rudius and Randolph fight to compare their strength. Rudius prepares himself, but Pax immediately says he was only joking. Pax explains what happened after his exile. He trained, improved himself, and gained the support of the King Dragon realm after asking to marry Princess Benedict Kingdragon. Zenoba realizes that Pax has changed. Pax claims he no longer wants revenge and asks Zenoba to lend his strength by commanding Fort Karen against the northern invasion. Event 6. Fort Karen and impossible odds. Rudius privately discusses the situation with Roxy and shares his fear that the entire assignment may be another Hitagami trap. New information arrives. Fort Karen has only about 500 defenders, while the invading force has nearly 5,000 soldiers. Rudius worries that Pax may be sacrificing Zenoba by sending him to a hopeless battlefield. But Zenoba remains calm, because he believes the fort's defensive position and their magic power can even the odds. Zenoba insists that even if he is being used as a pawn, defending Shirn is still his duty. He does not run from the obligation he chose for himself. When they reach Fort Karen, Zanoba takes command but wisely keeps the experienced knight Garrick involved. He then introduces Rudius and Roxy to the troops and raises morale. Event 7. Preparations for war. Rudius begins reshaping the battlefield around Fort Karen with earth magic, creating trenches, traps, and defensive terrain to slow down the enemy army. He assembles his magic armor and prepares for close combat, while also fortifying the castle itself so the defenders can survive the coming attack. Roxy teaches the soldiers how to use magic circles for coordinated fire attacks. Her role as a teacher and battlefield magician becomes very important here. Rudius notices that some soldiers fear him after seeing how easily he changes the landscape. To them, he looks less like a person and more like a walking natural disaster. Before the battle, Rudius confesses to Roxy that he is reluctant to kill people in war. Roxy does not dismiss his feelings, but her adventure experience makes her more mentally prepared for the reality of killing. Event 8. The Battle of Fort Karen. The enemy attacks, trying to fill Rudius's trenches and cross his traps with magic and bridges. Rudius calmly counters their attempts from the walls. Every time the enemy tries to erase his preparations, he uses his own magic to undo their progress. The fort soldiers activate Roxy's magic circles and launch fire attacks, forcing the enemy magicians to respond with water magic. By tracking where the enemy water magic originates, Rudius finds the opposing magicians and eliminates them. Once the enemy loses magical support, the battle shifts heavily in Shire's favor. Zanoba returns from a separate mission with only 10 of his 100 men left, but they captured an enemy royal commander. The victory is real, but the cost is painful. Event 9. An urgent message changes everything. 10 days after Fort Karen's victory, the enemy offers a truce and the defenders begin to believe the worst may be over. Ginger suddenly arrives from the capital with terrible news. A local warlord named Jade has launched a coup against King Pax in the name of another prince. Jade expected Fort Karen to fail and hoped Pax would send Randolph away, leaving the capital vulnerable. Even though the plan did not work perfectly, the rebellion still begins. Zanoba immediately decides to return to the capital to protect Pax. Rudius and Ginger are shocked, because Zanoba has already fulfilled his duty of defending Shire. Zanoba finally admits his real feeling. He is not only protecting his country, he wants to protect Pax because Pax is his younger brother. Event 10. To Pax's side, Rudius, Zanoba, and Roxy rush back toward Latakia, the Shiren capital, with Rudius wearing the bulky magic armor Mark I for safety. When they reach the capital, the castle entrance is crowded with soldiers, merchants, and adventurers, so Zanoba suggests entering through a secret underground passage. The tunnel is narrow, forcing Rudius to switch from the powerful Mark I into the smaller Mark Roman II armor so he can continue forward. The passage seems sealed, possibly by an earthquake or by the rebels, so Rudius uses earth magic to dig through and find another route. Eventually they reach the room where Rudius was once imprisoned years ago, the same place where he first met Zanoba. The empty castle feels like a ghost of their past. Event 11. Randolph blocks the king's door. On the 5th floor, Rudius, Roxy, and Zanoba find Death God Randolph sitting calmly outside Pax's room. Randolph explains that he created a barrier around the castle to protect Pax, and that everyone who is not already dead has fled. Zanoba tries to enter, but Randolph refuses because Pax ordered him to let no one pass. Even Zanoba's monstrous strength cannot force him through. Rudius initially tries to reason with Randolph, because both sides seem to want Pax alive. But when Randolph says he has heard of Hitagami, Rudius assumes the worst and prepares for combat. The misunderstanding turns into a dangerous fight against one of the strongest people in the world, while Rudius is wearing only the weaker Mark Roman II armor. Event 12. Wasted effort and Pax's final choice. Rudius, Roxy, and Zanoba fight Randolph, but the Death God proves extremely difficult to damage. Randolph strikes Roxy badly, and she survives only because of protective magic items. Rudius realizes they cannot safely win and orders a retreat. When Rudius asks what Hitagami told Randolph, Randolph explains that he has only heard the name and has never actually spoken to him. Rudius realizes the fight was a mistake. Randolph allows them into Pax's room. Pax stands on the balcony and reveals his despair. He tried to improve, tried to rule, and still nobody accepted him as king. Before anyone can stop him, Pax jumps from the balcony and dies. Rudius and Zanoba are left frozen by the realization that they arrived too late. Event 13. Aftermath in the fallen capital. Zanoba chooses to bring Pax's body to the rebels so the conflict can end, while Rudius wonders if cremating him would have been more respectful. Randolph carries Benedict away, explaining that Pax asked him to return her to the King Dragon realm and eventually raise their child. Randolph also reveals that he knows Hitagami only through an old story involving Batagati, the fighting god armor, and dragon god Laplace. In the town square, Pax's corpse is displayed while the rebels celebrate. The people show little emotion, but Zenoba's face reveals that he truly cared for his brother. Rudius feels that all their effort was wasted. He wonders whether Jade was another apostle, and whether Hitagami successfully pushed Pax into despair without ever appearing directly. Event 14. Roxy faces her guilt, and Zenoba chooses his path. Pax's final words wound Roxy deeply because he remembered her disappointment when he studied magic under her years ago. Roxy admits that she really did sigh when Pax showed her his progress. She had unconsciously compared him to Rudius and failed to encourage him when he needed it most. Rudius comforts her without pretending the harm did not matter. He reminds Roxy that she changed his life for the better and that she can become a better teacher by learning from this pain. Ginger reunites with the group and asks what Zenoba will do now. Zenoba decides to return to Sharia and renounce his position as a royal prince. Ginger still chooses to serve him, not because of his title, but because of her promise and loyalty. Zenoba accepts that she will continue walking beside him. Event 15. Reporting failure to Orsted. On the way back, Zenoba reflects on how his life changed through Rudius, Julie, Ginger, Nanahoshi, and even his late brother Pax. They return through Peruginus's teleportation route, update Nanahoshi and Peruginus, and finally make it back to Sharia. Rudius goes to Orsted expecting to report a failure, because Pax's death has damaged a future Orsted had relied on. Orsted explains that Hitagami likely used the King Dragon Realm's king, and the rebel Jade to corner Pax and destroy the future Shiren Republic. The consequences are enormous. Without Pax's republic, Orsted no longer knows where Laplace will be born, which means one of his most important future plans has collapsed. Event 16. It is all right to be happy. Zenoba suggests that the current loop may not be a complete failure if they gather allies powerful enough to fight Laplace without draining Orsted's mana. Orsted accepts Zenoba as a subordinate. Zenoba now has his own reason to fight Hitagami, revenge for the brother he could not save. Rudius returns home and discovers that Eris has already given birth to their son, Aris. He feels joy at meeting his child and sadness that he missed the birth. Rudius gathers his family and tells them the truth about Hitagami, Orsted, and the larger war they are involved in. Sharing the secret makes him feel lighter, because his family chooses to support him. The volume ends by shifting toward a long-term mission. Rudius will build an anti-Hitagami faction and gather allies for a future war against Laplace, even though that war may happen long after his own lifetime.